we're going to start by going down to the little battery icon and making sure that our PC is set to best performance, just so that we know we are using all the power our computer has to offer. We're then going to go into File Explorer and just check that all our drives are not write file, especially the one with Windows, because this will slow down all applications, including Premiere. We're then going to close all unneeded apps, just so that the only ones that we have open are the ones that we need to use Premiere with. We are then going to make sure that our computer stays cool. However you may do that, I'm using a laptop cooling pad linked in the description. You're also going to want to edit off of an SSD, but whatever you do, just make sure it's not what your Windows is running on. Now in Premiere, we're going to go to Preferences and all the way down to Memory. We are then going to allocate the most RAM that we can to Premiere, so that means the least to other applications. So for me, that's 3 GB. We're also going to set Optimize Rendering for Performance and press OK. We are now going to go back to Edit and down to Preferences once again, but this time we are going to go to Media Cache. We're now going to choose where the media cache is, well, its database. So we're going to switch that to make sure that it is not on the same drive that we have our Windows on. So for me, that is local disk D, and I'm just going to make sure that I have it in there rather than local disk C. Now we're going to go up to File and all the way down to Project Settings, and now over to General. So if you have dedicated graphics, you can use CUDA acceleration or possibly OpenCL to use your GPU for rendering, as well as effects. Now we're going to go back to Edit and all the way down to Preferences, but this time we're going to choose Autosave and either put up the amount of time in between autosaves or just turn it off, because it has been known to crash Premiere. Okay, so now that we've got all of the settings out of the way, now you're ready to put your footage into Premiere. Now what you're going to want to make sure is that you give it a chance to load. Now mine actually didn't here because I was recording my screen in 4K and it was lagging a bit, but you're just going to want to make sure it turns yellow. Now once it is yellow and you start scrolling through it, once you know you've given it a chance, if it's still lagging, you can bring down the playback resolution. Depending on the resolution of the original footage, you can bring it down from a half all the way to 1/16. And you can keep in mind that this will not change the render quality of your video, as it's just for when you're playing it back in the timeline. Now, as well as bringing down the playback quality, you can also bring down the paused quality for if you are just skimming through the project and you don't want it to be lagging out while you're going frame by frame, as that counts as being paused, and if it is at full, it might still have trouble loading. Now, as well as this, we should also make sure that we are in the right area of Premiere for what we are doing. So if we're planning to apply transitions and effects for video, we need to be in the editing part of Premiere, and if we're going to be doing Lumetri color, then we need to be in color. On the topic of color, if we are going to, what we need to do is go into our project and make a new adjustment layer. We are then going to want to drag it onto the clip that we want to add Lumetri color to, and you're going to apply what you want to apply to the clip on the adjustment layer that is above the clip that you want to change the colors of. I know it sounds confusing, but it's actually really simple and straightforward, and in the end it will actually speed up Premiere pretty significantly. Now, a small but important tip is if you're just editing one part of a video, if you zoom in on it, it will actually be saved in your RAM for that whole section that you are editing, depending on how far you are zoomed in. But once you have let it load and gone over it a few times, it will act as if it's already rendered. Now, on the topic of rendering, if there's just one section of a video with a lot of moving effects in that, you can actually render it out. So if you use I to set the in point and O to set the out point, you then press sequence and either render effects or just render into out, and that whole section will be rendered and ready to edit. Now as well, you're going to want to make sure that your sequence settings match your clip. So if you go into sequence and sequence settings, you can see what your sequence settings are, the resolution and frame rates, and then you can right click on your clip and go into properties and just make sure that the majority of your clips match the sequence settings so that Premiere doesn't have to do as much work for changing settings. Finally, if all else fails and it just keeps lagging, you can actually disable some of your clips. So if you just right click and go up to enable and click it, you can disable your clips that are not currently in use.